You're listening to Elder Myths and Shadows, where forgotten tales breathe again. Many call it America's best documented ghost story. It began with a strange creature in a cornfield, and it ended with a man's mysterious death. In 1804, John Bell moved his family from North Carolina to a quiet farm on the Red River in Tennessee. For 13 years, the Bells lived an ordinary frontier life. Then, in the summer of 1817, that ordinary life ended. John Bell spotted a strange animal at the edge of his cornfield, somewhere between a dog and a rabbit. He fired at it, and it vanished. That night, the family heard knocking on the walls of their cabin. Outside, there was nothing there. In the weeks that followed, more strange sightings piled up. A bird of impossible size in the trees, a girl in a green dress swinging from an oak branch, and a large black dog that trailed a farmhand home each night before vanishing at the door. Over the following weeks, the disturbances grew. Scratching inside the walls, the sound of chains dragging across the floor. Blankets were yanked off beds in the middle of the night. Dishes rattled on the table with no one near them. Then came the voices, faint and mumbling at first, growing clearer with every passing week. The entity seemed to focus its cruelty on the youngest daughter, Betsy. It slapped her hard enough to leave handprints, pulled her hair until it came loose in clumps, and stuck her with what felt like needles, even though nothing was ever found in the room. Desperate, John Bell brought in his neighbor, James Johnston, to spend a night in the house and witness it firsthand. Johnston left convinced the family was dealing with something genuinely evil. When asked who or what it was, the spirit gave several answers, eventually settling on a name. It called itself Kate. Locals believed Kate was the spirit of a neighbor, Kate Batts, a woman John Bell had reportedly cheated in a land deal. She had no part in it by every account, but the name stuck anyway. The entity gave John Bell a mocking nickname, Old Jack Bell, and used it constantly while hurling threats and curses at him. Visitors who came to witness the haunting said the voice could quote scripture verse for verse, and once recited 2 different sermons given the same hour, miles apart. According to local legend, even General Andrew Jackson visited the farm after hearing the stories from soldiers who had served under him. His wagon reportedly froze in place on the property until an unseen voice told the horses to move again. While Kate doted on Lucy Bell, even bringing her fruit when she was ill, the entity's hostility toward John Bell never wavered. She declared again and again that she intended to torment him until his death. The same cruelty followed Betsy into her love life. When she got engaged to a local boy named Joshua Gardner, Kate turned violently against the match. Every time the couple tried to be alone together, the attacks intensified, until Betsy finally broke off the engagement out of sheer exhaustion. John Bell's health collapsed under the strain. Seizures, a swollen throat that made it hard to eat, and a face that periodically went slack on one side. In 1820, John Bell was found unconscious. A small vial of unknown liquid was discovered near his body. The voice was said to claim credit for his death outright, admitting that she had poisoned him. John Bell died the next day. At his funeral, witnesses claimed they heard the spirit singing. After Bell's death, the disturbances slowed. The spirit reportedly told the family she would return in 7 years. In 1823, workers digging near the homestead reportedly found a child's remains, along with old graves close to the cave, ground that Kate herself was said to call her anchor to the land. Some accounts say she came back briefly in 1828, made a handful of predictions, then left for good. A few later retellings pushed the timeline even further. claiming the spirit also promised to return in 107 years, in 1937, and again in 2044, though those longer-range prophecies only show up in more modern versions of the story. One persistent theory points away from the supernatural entirely. Betsy's schoolteacher, Richard Powell, who is said to have secretly loved her, may have staged at least part of the haunting to break up her engagement to Gardner. Suspicious timing or not, Betsy ended up marrying Powell in 1824, and by most tellings, the disturbances had already stopped by then. Here's the catch. None of this was written down at the time. The first full account wasn't published until 1894, more than 70 years after the haunting supposedly ended. That account came from local newspaper editor Martin Ingram, drawing on decades of oral retellings passed through the community. Critics point out there is no contemporary record from the actual years of the haunting. No newspaper article, no court document, no letter. Compare that to a similar case from the same era, the Edgefield ghost in South Carolina, which actually was reported in newspapers as it happened. The Bell Witch had no such paper trail until decades after the fact, by which point the story had already had a lifetime to grow in the retelling. None of that stopped the legend from spreading. By the 20th century, the Bell Farm had become a fixture of American ghost lore. The cave on the property, barely mentioned in the earliest tellings, was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2008. Today, it draws ghost hunters and tourists from across the country, all chasing a story that may have started with nothing more than a man, a strange animal, and a cornfield. Real haunting, elaborate folklore, or something in between. The Bell Witch remains one of the only cases where a family's grief and a community's imagination merged into a single story. 2 centuries later, nobody has ever fully explained what happened on that Tennessee farm. And the cave is still there, waiting for the next visitor brave enough to walk in. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. Comment what topic you'd like to see next. Another whisper awaits, if you dare.